Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Players NIL Industry Insider Podcast. And my special guest today, Asia Mape. Asia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm really excited for this conversation. I thank you for joining us. You work in a space that's near and dear to my heart, and that is youth sports. I grew up in an age where it wasn't as structured as today. We played on the playground, we played in the street, we played in the sandlot, so to speak. I lived it as a parent as this transition to craziness happened. And we want to talk about that. We want to talk about the work that you're doing with the Love to Watch You Play organization. But I always try to make it a little bit personal in the beginning, Asia. So I want to go back to your childhood. Tell me about your introduction to sports, your introduction to athletics. How did it happen? What sports did you play? Was there a single person or a group of people that influenced you most? Tell us about your connection to sports.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me. I'm really kind of excited to dig in and my story, I don't remember a time when sports weren't in my life, really. I mean, you can see old videos and hear me either bouncing a ball or see me walking through the frame with a ball. My dad still, he's almost 90 years old. He still teaches karate and yoga and tai chi. So I think like it really started with my dad. He's always been very active and running YMCA's and teaching summer classes and being the coach at the local rec centers. And so I'm pretty sure that it came mostly from my dad. That being said, my dad and mom split up when I was really young. So, I just remember mostly trying to chase around my older brothers and keep up with them. They were always playing sports and I'm like you, a different time, different age. We were out in the streets and out in the fields, um, playing everything. I just love sports, I was good at them, I think, back then. And so it felt good. It was a good distraction from some of the stuff that we had going on in our family life. It was an escape. It was a place, I kind of felt confident and felt masterful when I was playing sports. And so it was a natural for me. I loved it. And I worked hard at it. I can remember going out by myself and taking hundreds of shots, and I ended up gravitating towards basketball. So that was the one sport that I don't know, I liked it better than everything else. I think if we had volleyball, I grew up back east, I may have, there is something special and fun about volleyball, but it was all basketball. And, I played since I was a young girl and did a little of the AAU, but it's funny, it wasn't a big, I can remember having an extra practice or two, and we did travel a little, but it certainly wasn't anything like it is today. So it was mostly high school basketball, and we won our state championship in Annandale, Virginia. And really, sports have been just a part of every aspect of my life. My bridesmaids in my wedding were all my former college basketball teammates. I ended up working in sports television for 20 plus years and then founded I Love to Watch You Play. So, and I have three daughters, all of whom play sports, and two of them, one of them plays in college and one of them will be. So, it's sort of been a part of my life at every step of the way.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty common story, and it's great. And look, for those in the audience that may not be as dedicated to sports as you were, or as perhaps I was, there's lots of ways to chase your passion and use that passion to get you where you want to in life. And it could be math, could be art, science, fashion, food, travel, could be a lot of things. For many of us, it was sports. We always talk about the life skills that happen with sports, in terms of teamwork, camaraderie, sacrifice, discipline, structure, maybe learning how to lose. You played sports in college as well at a higher level, even more focused. Tell us some of the takeaways from your playing experience in terms of the life skills that you got out of it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, all of the above, right? I mean, you learn how to lose, you learn how to win gracefully, which is, equally as important. That discipline piece and time management, especially in college, becomes really, a pretty big deal. getting along with people that you may not have been friends with in the outside world. You come across a lot of different types of people and different styles of leadership, different people from different backgrounds. And so, knowing how to work within the framework of a team, I think is huge and so valuable for any kind of work that you end up doing down the line. I know that you must have heard, as most people have, that statistic around women executives. I think like 90% of the women in C-suite were like former athletes, and it makes total sense. You really, and you'll see, I've found, and I'm sure in your work you've seen the same thing. A lot of times, especially female athletes, are really high achievers. I just was seeing something about grade point averages going around on college teams. I mean, it's mind blowing. These girls are bringing in almost 4.0s and spending hours and hours at their sport. And I have a daughter who plays at, a high level in soccer, and they're not just doing practice, they're not just doing recovery and film, they're also then on their own going to do a lot of different things. I mean, it is a full-time job. And so learning how to manage that and get good grades and manage to have like a social life, which I think they can. I think it is possible. But you have to be disciplined and organized. And that's one of the things it teaches you. So, I mean, so many things, even from like my daughter this past weekend was really sick and had to push through. She was playing in a beach volleyball tournament. It was pouring frigid rain. It was really important to her teammate whose college coach was going to be there. So she pushed through, and it was like 2 days of, a lot of hard stuff. And I think it's hard sometimes in this day and age to put our kids in those situations without sports. I just don't know how you get some of that where, she was a little hesitant and worried at first, and then she felt so good after. It's like you push through stuff and you realize how strong you are, and you realize that you can do so much more than you think you might be able to. And I don't know without sports a lot of times how we get our young people to experience that.
Yeah, well said. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You started an organization called Love to Watch You Play. Why did you start it, and what do you do?
So it's I love to watch you play.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And
Okay.
that's okay. That's okay. And there was some research done by Proactive. Bruce Brown, he started Proactive. It's an organization that helps train coaches and parents and players. And he did some research and found that was really all that kids want to hear. And I actually heard that in a TED talk by John O'Sullivan, who you may or may not know is really deeply involved in youth sports. He referenced it. And at the time we were starting, I was working with another woman who I worked with in sports television, and we were starting something in youth sports really as a passion project. We both have kids around the same ages. They were young at that point and just getting started. And we're like, wow, this is out of control, and felt really sort of crazy and with no sort of guidebook or pathway to kind of get through it. And so we decided to start something. We are both working full-time jobs. And we just loved that name. And we had, we thought about, mom's blog, we were trying to come up with all these names. And that one just, it really spoke to us. And I think it speaks to a lot of people. And it's not something I came up with, but boy, do I love it. And really that's all our kids need to hear after they play is I love to watch you play, or before. Like it's really just sort of sums up everything really that a parent should be doing and saying to their kid in one phrase.
Many people in my generation would say that youth sports is broken. We've gone too far. How do you react to that?
Yes, you know, whew, that's where I spend a lot of my time is talking about these issues. I don't know that it's broken, although I've written headlines very similar to that, because in a lot of ways we are failing our kids. The grown-ups involved in sports. Youth sports is like an empty vessel. It doesn't necessarily bring about all those great positive things we were just talking about. People have had horrible experiences. A lot of them have had horrible experiences. And so it's really about what the adults bring to our kids' youth sports experience that makes it incredible. It can be life-changing. It can change the direction of a child's future. And I don't mean because they go play in college. I mean because they were inspired by an incredible coach. And so the power around youth sports is really big. And I think people like you and me and just about everybody else realize the value in it. But when it's done wrong, it can be really bad. And I think that's where I spend a lot of my time. There's great organizations out there, the Aspen Institute, and all these people doing, hard work around policy and trying to figure out maybe getting a governing body involved in youth sports and having some oversight on it. I spend my time talking to parents and trying to help them navigate this journey with exactly as it is right now, to the best of their ability to help their child remain healthy and happy and joyful and passionate about their sport. So whether they want to play it through high school, through middle school, or into college, it's a good, positive experience. And I think parents have a lot of room in that area to make a positive or negative experience, right? We can't always help it if the coach is abusive in some way besides getting our kids off that team. But a lot of things around sports, youth sports, their teams, we do have a lot of say and a lot of guidance and support to give our kids. And so that's really what I do, is spend my time thinking of ways to communicate these positive messages to parents so that they'll receive them. Because a lot of times it's the parents that kind of already know the right things to do and are doing them, that like my content. And so I'm always looking for ways to reach those parents that are misguided maybe. And I don't really blame. There's no blame. There's no guilt. There's no making people feel bad around this. I've fallen into the same trap where sports became too important, and I almost wrecked my relationship with my oldest daughter. And and I wasn't a crazy sports parent by any stretch of the imagination, but the pressures we're putting on them and the expectations and the you're never good enough, and everything revolves around sports. And if you play bad, you're not getting ice cream, and I'm giving you a cold shoulder. The messages that we're sending to our kids is ruining them. It's ruining them. Their spirits, they're anxious, they're depressed. And it's not just in sports, right? It's across everything. You got to take 5 APs now, or your parents are going to be happy. You have to be the best in your piano class, or it's this pressure is coming not just from youth sports, but it's a lot from parents, a lot from their own peers, a lot from themselves and social media. So they're getting attacked all around the whole, everything from everywhere.
Yeah, we could probably talk for days about the societal issues that lead into all of those things. Cell phones, perhaps, and mental health. To me, I've developed this philosophy about parenting, and I have shared it with some of my clients and some of my friends as an adult. My philosophy is this: a good, solid family unit, parenting unit is like a highway straight down the road. It's got a yellow line down the middle that separates the two lanes. On one shoulder is the crazy parents that are the helicopter parents, over controlling, too involved, eccentric. On the other shoulder are the parents that are not involved, that don't care, right? And we know parents that never show up. We've never met the parents. And we know parents that are monitoring and measuring every ounce and totally controlling. To me, it's impossible not to drift off the side of the road as a parent. It happens. It happened to me. Full transparency, probably more than I would like to admit right now. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't see it. But healthy parents, good relationships, you may drift off, but you come back to the middle of the road. Crazy parents go off to the shoulder and they never come back, right? And that's kind of my overall analogy of it. But I think the biggest thing to me that I've learned as a parent of 4 Division I athletes is the societal pressure of the cocktail party, the happy hour. Where's Asia going to school, right? And that just begins the whole, oh my gosh, she's on a full scholarship. We know that may not be true in most cases. Oh my gosh, she's going to play as a freshman. The coach promised her she's going to play, right? All of the societal pressure, where's, and you see it, the bumper stickers on the car from all these great schools, and the parents, puffing their chest out saying Mark is going to this amazing school. And that's really the problem. So your education process has to somehow touch those parents and get them back to the middle of the road. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's one part of the problem, a big part of it. And, you can call it cocktail party or social media posts, right? Or whatever. I do think that that is a huge issue is that college scholarship. And I think, yeah, it's even not just a scholarship. I think these days it's just been helping your kid get into a good college, right? Athletics can be a great path to that. So I think one of the things that I'm constantly trying to educate people on, first off, is it's such a small percentage, right? It's like 7% of kids will play in college, 2% will play Division 1, point blah, whatever will play professionally. So you're doing all of this, you're pushing them so hard that they're depressed and their bodies are breaking down because they've been specializing for so long. And it's a really big chance they're not going to play, or that they get to that point and they're so burned out. And I see this all the time that they choose not to play. And so it's really kind of um, silly to be wasting so much and spending so much of your money and your time and their emotional energy around something that is probably not going to happen. And I think it gets difficult and I've been in this position where you have that good athlete, right? Like if your kids aren't very good, that's kind of fun because it might not be fun all the time if they're not doing well, but you kind of accept it. They're going to find their own path and whatever. If your kids are amazing, they're kind of put on these great teams and things have come a little easier. They get, special treatment. You kind of think, okay, we're probably going to be playing in college if we're already doing this. And so you kind of get on that path. I think it's those of us with kids kind of in the middle where the real struggle happens, and the kids don't always want it. And even kids on the top side may not want it too, but the kids don't always want it. But the parent sees the potential. The parent sees a pathway to college. The parent is spending so much time, money, energy. They want some payoff for it. And anytime you're doing something for an outcome, especially something like sports that is supposed to be all about the process and what you're learning and growing and doing, it's going to be a negative, right? Because we start to get so caught up in the FOMO, as you're talking about, or the return on the investment, that we lose our way. And it happens to good humans, good parents, people with really good intentions, but we just lose our way. We get caught up in, oh my God, every kid is going to that 2 week long summer camp. I know we can't afford it. I know they want a break, but we're going to do it because we're going to be left behind. And that's kind of it, just really brings about this behavior on teams and in communities and in leagues that is really unhealthy. And it's sort of being able to step back, really meet your kid where they're at,
Mhm.
and take some agency and know with all good faith that if your kid doesn't do that camp, if your kid sits out a season because they're exhausted and or they want to focus on something else, or they need to get their grades up, that it's this journey that is up and down and up and down, and they'll probably be fine anyways. And I think we really lose touch with that, knowing our kid and knowing what's best for them, and we get really just caught up in fear. And anytime you're leading by fear, it's not good. And so I think listening to your kid, and some kids want to go, 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 and it's everything. This is not a one size fits all. And I'll put out an article about why I pushed my daughter to a soccer practice one day, and the next day of why you should never push your kid, because it is definitely every kid, every family, every situation is different. So you have to look out for your kid. You have to meet them where they're at. You have to have open, good conversations. And when they're little, it's a little more difficult, but especially when they start to get older, what do they want? And really meet them where they're at instead of trying to guide them and push them and cajole them into doing what you think is best for them.
It's great messaging. Is it idealistic and not realistic, or is it realistic? When you meet that parent, I'm sure parents, you see the spectrum, some that absolutely don't want to talk to you, some that are curious, some that are really engaged. But when you meet that parent in the middle, okay, that's trying to figure out if their kid has opportunities and maybe create opportunities for them, how do you open the conversation? How do you engage? What's the messaging? What are the techniques or the tools? For those of us that meet the crazy parent, how do we engage with them and help them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if you're not open to some of these ideas, it's really hard, right? It's really hard. And I think that when you give them the stats, you give them the science, about how many kids' bodies are breaking down. Like literally, these kids are getting to college at these top programs, especially in basketball. We're seeing a lot in soccer, and they're tearing their ACL for the third time. It's like, what if you give them the science, you have to give them all of the research around it, and it's going to be up to them to decide. I mean, you can't push someone. I think a lot of times what my biggest obstacles are is that the young parents that really need to hear this message when it matters, like the ones seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade, when you're starting to make some of these decisions, your kid is maybe going or gone through puberty, you kind of see where they're at. Until they've gone through the ACL, until they've gone through the kid being, the best and then the worst the next year, until they've had these experiences, it's very difficult to get the message across. Very difficult. I didn't get the message until I went through it. And so it is how I try to appeal to also what's going to give them good outcomes, because I think that's what most parents want. And the thing is that typically they're the same. Okay, because if you push, 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 and your kid is dying for a break and you know it, and you don't even give them the room or the space to talk about it because it scares you so badly that, oh my God, we're going to get off this path. I can tell he's so tired and grouchy all the time and doesn't want to go to practice. If you give them that one season off or allow them that one season off, or maybe it's one day you say, let's go get ice cream and bag that practice today. You have to meet them where they're at. The longer outcome is going to be better. But how you get this across to parents, you just have to give them the research and keep pounding them over the head. And really, until they see it enough in their own community or experience it themselves, it is a really hard thing to get through to them.
Yeah, it's a challenge. We've got so much pressure on parents and everyone. Winding down here, last question. Look into your crystal ball going forward. Where are we at with youth sports 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? Are we like the highway coming back to the center, or are we still crazy on one shoulder or the other 3 and 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you women's sports right now is only getting more and more exciting, which is amazing for female athletes in a lot of ways, but it's also just going to amp up the and NIL and everything else, all these new changes now, the NCAA with all the scholarships. There's a lot of changes that when I look at how it will affect youth sports, doesn't seem like it's going to be positive to me, as far as making parents more calm, right? I think it's going to make us more crazy. Um, but that being said, I mean, there is so many more. When I first started this in 2010, there was like two other people doing it, kind of messaging around this stuff. I do think, as you're seeing too in your work, that it's needed, that I think there are going to be enough people on the other side to share their stories, to see, oh, the kid never made it, even though he was the best player. I mean, you see even like all these top players, how many ACL tears they have. I do think that the message is getting out there a lot more, a lot more. And so, I don't know if it will take some policy changes and someone running youth sports. I know people hate to hear that in some ways, but in some ways, there's other countries that do it that way, and it's done a lot healthier and a lot better. So, I'm not sure what will happen, but I am a little scared. There's also a ton of big business coming into youth sports. They all see the billions and billions of dollars and opportunities there. So I think it could be a really tough time for
Yeah.
parents to try to stay sane.
Well, it's a great time for you and your program. Asia, I love to watch you play is the name of your organization. If people want to learn more, what's your website? What are your social handles? How do they find you?
Yes, I love to watch you play. AllwrittenOut.com is the website. And that's mostly blogs and podcasts on there. I put one out about every week. You can also sign up for my newsletter on there. Social, I love Instagram right now. That's my main go-to, and it's at the I love to watch you play. I do have Facebook and Twitter as well, but I say I'm most active on my Instagram these days.
Great. Asia, you're doing fabulous work. I really, applaud you and your mission. And if you just change one person's life or one family's life for the better, it's a success. But I know your goals are much higher than that. So I appreciate what you're doing. I congratulate you for what you've done, and I'm cheering for you going forward. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay.